As the sun began to rise over the Pacific on May 1st, 1898, the waters of Manila Bay, still and shadowed under the first light of dawn, were about to witness a transformation. A transformation not only of empires and power, but of the very balance of the world's oceans. Here, in this shallow anchorage off the coast of the Philippines, two fleets faced one another. One, ragged and aging, clung to the vestiges of an empire in decline. The other, modern and eager, sailed under a flag that had not yet fully revealed its imperial ambitions. What unfolded that morning would go down as one of the most decisive and lopsided naval battles in modern history, the Battle of Manila Bay. In the background of this clash stood the broader conflict known as the Spanish-American War, a war ignited more by sensationalist headlines and nationalist fervor than by strategic necessity. Across the Atlantic, American newspapers fanned the flames with lurid tales of Spanish atrocities in Cuba, many exaggerated or outright fabricated. The explosion of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor, killing 261 sailors, provided the spark. Though the true cause of the blast remained uncertain, public opinion had already found its culprit: Spain. The war that followed would span continents, and in the Pacific, the United States eyed an opportunity: the Spanish-held Philippines. This archipelago, home to Manila Bay, was not just a distant colony. It was a strategic prize. Holding it meant commanding a gateway to Asia. At the heart of the American campaign in the Pacific stood Commodore George Dewey, a seasoned officer who had served during the Civil War. His Asiatic Squadron, a modest force by European standards, was nonetheless technologically superior to the scattered remnants of Spain's Pacific Fleet. Dewey's flagship, the USS Olympia, led a line of sleek, well-gunned cruisers and gunboats through the dark waters toward Manila, having departed Hong Kong just days earlier under orders to engage and destroy the Spanish squadron. On the Spanish side stood Rear Admiral Patricio Montojo, a loyal and career officer sent hurriedly to the Philippines to organize a defense. But Montojo had been handed a hopeless task. His ships were outdated and ill-maintained. Ammunition was scarce. His crews were undertrained. Many hadn't fired a gun in over a year. Promised reinforcements from Madrid had never materialized. And, to make matters worse, some of the fleet's best guns had been stripped from their decks to arm coastal fortifications that proved either unfinished or ineffective. Montojo originally planned to make a stand at Subic Bay, but upon discovering that the minefields and shore batteries promised to him were incomplete or non-functional, he was forced to return to Manila Bay. There, he arranged his ships in shallow water near Cavite, hoping that if defeat was inevitable, at least the lives of his sailors might be saved by allowing them to swim to shore. And so it was. Just before midnight on April 30th, under the cover of darkness, Dewey's fleet slipped quietly into Manila Bay. Guided by intelligence from the American consul in Manila, they avoided the mined northern channel and instead navigated the unmined southern passage between El Fraile and Caballo Islands. 2 Spanish mines detonated as they passed, but the water was too deep and the mines too low. The American ships sailed on, undeterred. At 5:15 a.m., the Cavite batteries spotted the incoming fleet and opened fire. The shells splashed harmlessly short. Then, at 5:41 a.m., from the deck of the Olympia, Commodore Dewey uttered the command that would make history. "You may fire when ready, Gridley." With that, the American guns roared to life. Dewey's squadron, in perfect formation, passed in front of the anchored Spanish ships, unleashing broadsides from their port guns. Then they turned, passed again, firing from the starboard. This maneuver repeated 5 times, each sweep bringing them closer, from 5,000 yards down to just 2,000. Shell after shell rained down on the Spanish vessels, whose return fire, though brave, was largely ineffective. The Reina Cristina, Montojo's flagship, attempted a bold counterattack, cutting her cables and charging directly at the American line. It was a suicidal move. American fire tore through her hull, setting her ablaze. Over half her crew of 400 became casualties. Montojo himself was wounded. With the ship barely afloat, he ordered her scuttled to prevent her capture. Nearby, the Castilla, already unpowered and used more as a floating battery, was torn apart by shell fire. Her captain ordered her abandoned and sunk. The Don Antonio de Ulloa was struck at the waterline. Her captain killed instantly. The Isla de Luzon and Isla de Cuba, small protected cruisers, took hits but survived the initial onslaught. At 7:45 a.m., Dewey briefly withdrew. A message from the USS Boston mistakenly reported only 15 rounds of 5-inch ammunition remaining per gun. In fact, they had only expended 15 rounds per gun. But Dewey, cautious and composed, paused the assault and told his men it was time for breakfast. Perhaps the most relaxed intermission in naval warfare history. Meanwhile, fires raged aboard the Spanish fleet. Ammunition exploded. Sailors leapt into the water. When Dewey resumed the attack at 10:40 a.m., resistance was virtually non-existent. Montojo ordered the remaining ships scuttled, their breech blocks removed and sent ashore. Shore batteries at Sangley Point and Cavite were targeted and silenced. By 12:40 p.m., Spanish flags were lowered. The battle was over. The cost to the United States? Just one death, and that not from enemy fire but a heart attack suffered by an engineer aboard the USRC McCulloch. 9 others were wounded. Spanish casualties were far graver, 77 dead, 271 wounded, and every single ship in their squadron either sunk or scuttled. The consequences of Dewey's victory were immediate and profound. He controlled Manila Bay, but lacked ground forces to take the city. He cabled Washington requesting 5,000 troops. In response, President McKinley mobilized 20,000. In the interim, Dewey took a bold step. He returned Emilio Aguinaldo, the exiled Filipino revolutionary leader, to the Philippines. Aguinaldo would soon resume the fight for Philippine independence, first against Spain, and later, tragically, against the United States. For his triumph, Dewey was showered with honors. Congress created a special Dewey Medal, awarded to all who had served under his command. He was promoted to Admiral of the Navy, the highest rank ever held in the U.S. Navy. Monuments sprang up in his name, from Union Square in San Francisco to Dewey Square in Boston. For a time, he was even floated as a presidential candidate. But perhaps more lasting than medals or monuments was what his victory symbolized: the end of the Spanish colonial era in the Pacific and the dawn of American global power. The Battle of Manila Bay was more than just a lopsided military triumph. It marked a turning point in history, a moment when a new empire began to stretch its muscles across the sea, shaping the century to come. And so, on that fateful day in May, amid the haze of gun smoke and the glare of rising sun, Manila Bay became the crucible of a new order. Not with armies on land, but with cannon from the sea. Not with a protracted siege, but with a single, thunderous morning that would echo across oceans.